Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
David Rios.
Hi there.
And tonight's special guest, Rik Offenberger.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you here. Hopefully everyone has had a good week so far. So we will get straight into things. Normally, when you have people who come onto the show, work in the industry, they might have a specialty or one or two fields that they kind of like really dive into. However, as far as the business side of comics, Rik, you've kind of done everything, it feels like.
Well, I've done a lot. I was a fan, and I loved comics, and I've read comics since I was 7. And when I was about 25, the business I worked for was sold, and I no longer had a job, and I had 10,000 comics, and I opened a comic store. I thought that would be a good idea. And I was reading, different articles and different things on how to make your business successful. And one of the things they said was try and become an expert in some aspect of your field. So the big trade publication was the Comic Buyer's Guide. And so I wrote to Don Thompson and I said, I'd be a freelancer. And so he hired me. And I had I worked on the high school paper. And I was really just looking to plug my store as the different articles and stories I did for them. And as it turned out, I'm in Southern California. And Archie Comics launched shortly after I started working for the Comic Buyer's Guide, and I covered a deal with that, not all of it, obviously, but to talk to early creators and cover part of that, so that helped. And then my wife left for one of my customers and had to sell the store. And without store and without the monthly meetings, I had monthly meetings with Marvel, which was a conduit for a lot of information. And a lot of the stuff I reported and covered, I thought, well, I guess I'm kind of done here. And I moved to the internet, and I just started a clipping service online, and that's where First Comics News started off, as working on the Yahoo list server and just clipping news. And over time, that changed, and we started doing original reviews, and we started building up, more of a base and doing more with and branching out into our own website. I was working for comic book resources, and the lady who was running the Pulse quit, if you remember the Pulse. And so I put together a business plan to take over the Pulse, and I presented them, and they liked my plan, but we couldn't come together on an actual financial compensation package. And I worked for Archie at the time. I mean, I have a job.
Yeah.
But I thought I could do both. And so when we did agree, I started First Comics News on the internet. I'd moved from Yahoo list server onto its own website and just put my business plan into operation. Still going.
Yeah. Nice.
I worked for Archie for about a decade. It was an interesting story. When I was working on the other websites, Alex Segura was my contact at Archie, and he was their PR. And one day he tells me, I just want to let you know I've quit and I'm going to DC, and I enjoyed working with you. So I had interviewed Michael Silverclate, who was the owner. Richard Goldwater was out. He had cancer, and he had not been in the office. But I had interviewed Michael Silverclate. And so I called him up on my way to work. And I said I want Alex's job. And we talked for about 15 minutes as I drove to work. They hired me at the end.
Nice.
And I was there for a decade.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to do a lot of things in comics that I enjoy. And so that was nice.
Yeah. And not only have you done a lot of things, also you've done some things earlier than others, because I looked up, and your Yahoo list server news clips service was Superhero News, correct? And that was
right.
Back
That's
in
correct.
1998. So that was before I feel like a lot of people were really starting to use the internet in that kind of way. And
Newsarama was doing their stuff on the internet, but also their stuff on Comic Buyer's Guide. And they were doing kind of both.
Yeah.
And the list server, I was doing it was a clipping service initially.
Yeah.
And so I was just taking snippets from different things and trying to drive business to other people. I mean, that's how we started. Yeah. And so Rich Johnson had just started off with his Ramblings. I think it was Ramblings 7. It was the first one. And we were covering Newsarama, and we're covering a variety of sites that no longer exist.
Sure.
And I had contacted them early on, and they all agreed to participate. And when Newsarama was sold, the owners talked to me about the clipping service, and I said, I have an agreement, and I showed it to them. They were surprised. But we didn't. And so eventually we moved on to just doing our own news, because I had doing the Super News. I'd also worked at Silver Bullet Comics, and they did some post the news. And this was long before there was, Microsoft, not Microsoft, before there was WordPress. So it was more laborious, and you had to know more code.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this stuff, but I knew the need. And though Jason Bright, who owned it, explained to me how the process worked, and I agreed to do this. And so that taught me the entire back end of the comic news industry. I had done interviews and I had done clippings, all that, but I didn't know the nuts and bolts of actually running the physical website unit. And so that was invaluable. And I was there for several years.
Yes, and we do have some live watchers who recognize you. You're also known now for G-Man Comics. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction to that and what people might recognize?
Well, G-Man Comics was an accident. I have been a huge fan of the Mighty Crusaders my whole life, or at least since they invented comic specialty stores.
Yeah.
So, I picked up an issue here or there. My library had an issue of Jaguar. I'd seen things in secondhand bookstores, but I started with the Red Circle line. And I had a website about this, and I had, and so I reformed the Shield G-Man Club. And the way it used to work is you mailed in a postage stamp, you got a membership card and a badge, and then the kids were supposed to actually help law enforcement enforce the law and write back about their incidences where they were helping fight crime in real life, which sounds rather dangerous. But what I did is I made membership cards for the people who owned Mighty Crusader based websites. And I made badges and I made cards and I sent it out to them, and our group was small. Well, we moved to Facebook. Our group is large.
Yeah.
And if you go to Facebook, you can find the Shield G-Man Club, and it's all about people who are extremely excited about the Mighty Crusaders. And I still make new badges and cards every year. And you can still get one, and they're still free.
Nice.
You send me one. You send me one first class postage stamp, and I'll stick them in an envelope and mail it to you with your stamp.
That's cool.
Just like it's 1941.
It's the whole secret decoder badge thing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. and so it's just fun.
Yeah.
And I did the Crusaders San Diego. I did it when I was with Archie Comics, and I kept doing it since I'm not with Archie Comics, and I'll be doing it again this year in San Diego. But and we do it every year, or every year they let us. And so I'm a big fan of that. And so there was an artist, Mitch Kwok, who got together with me, and we did fake Mighty Crusader covers as if they were actually comics. And so I would put together a basic scenario, and he would draw up a cover, and we'd just put it on sign it with the block citation. There was no comic. And so we were having fun. And then he said, well, we should make comics. And I said, no, I work for Archie. I know what's involved in making comics. We're not making comics. And eventually he left and went and made his own comics. And Eric Bennett, who was a member of the group, of the Facebook group, said, you need to meet Gilbert Monsanto. And so he introduced me to Gilbert Monsanto, and Gilbert Monsanto has an arena where you can sponsor your own character, and he'll draw them. And then eventually, and it does take a while, he has enough characters where he puts them into a voting, and everyone who has characters in this around, and he does like characters, like all women, all speedsters, all that. And he draws a picture of one, and then whoever gets voted as the top two end up in another mock cover that he does, for the winners, and those winners get that cover. And so Gilbert did my characters, and I was having fun. And Gilbert said, we can make a comic. And I said, no, we can't. And he said, yeah, we can do this. And Eric said, yeah, we can do this, and I can do the lettering area, and we'll do a good job, and it'll all come out okay. And Jim Burroughs, who's my third partner in this, is he said, well, I'd like to do production. I'd like to help out. I'd like to be part of this. And Jim Burroughs and I had separately, and you can still get these on Planet, fanzines for the 80th anniversary of MLJ, and they're absolutely free. You download them for free. If you want a physical print copy, it's whatever they're charging for paper. We make no money off of this. This was just a fanzine for the 80th anniversary. We made a few issues. everyone in the Shield G-Man Club contributed. So it's it was a joint effort to kind of celebrate the 8th anniversary. So then we go and we put together the first Kickstarter. And it went really, really slow because we didn't know exactly what we were doing. And Alan came up to me and said, I draw this too. I said, okay, well, I gave him the second script. And Alan finished before Gilbert did. But Gilbert had a lot of commitments. He was doing comics for other people. He was doing all sorts of stuff. And so probably a year after we started, we had 2 comics ready. Then we did our first Kickstarter. And 5 years later, we're still going strong. And we're just about to launch our 9th Kickstarter. And all the art is in production. One of the comics is completely finished. We do a large number of comics in each Kickstarter, somewhere between maybe is 6 to 11, depending on what we have ready at the time. And the idea is that you can gang together all of your shipping into one product, because one comic ships at the exact same price as 5. And so if you were to get them from us, if we did a monthly campaign, you'd be spending more on postage than you'd be spending on comics, And so theoretically, people appreciate the fact that they only get the comics twice a year, but they don't lot in postage, especially when you amortize that across the board for multiple comics. And so we started with Agent Kirby. Agent Kirby is Simon N. Kirby, the agent, and you can see where the name came from.
Yes.
I wanted people to see the name. I thought it was clever, and I thought it would portray that we're doing a Silver Age Captain America style character. And as a follow off of that, I wanted to do another uber American patriotic character, and so we did Sergeant Flag. And Sergeant Flag is Rob McFarlane, and he's a 90s style character. And they're both very patriotic, and they're both very different. And so we play off that. There's a dude called Lynx, and that I had done when I had my comic shop, and we had done. Hold on a second.
No
problem. We had done as sample pages, and we gave them out to the readers the buyers when they pick up copies of their comics. So each week they'd get a page, with the idea of theoretically we'd publish a comic at the end. And so I was prepared for that, and I was doing week conventions every weekend, and so it was easy. I thought I could sell some customers, and then as I went from one convention to another, I could move others. And I think the print run minimum at the time was 1,000 units. Might have been 500. Whatever the number was, I only had to move 20% to break even if I didn't sell them to Diamond, because Diamond takes 60% off the top.
Yeah.
So if I could just sell them by hand, one at a time, if I moved 20%, I'd break even. And I thought I could actually do that as I'd sign them at conventions, and I'd push them at the tables and try and move them enough so at least break even. But they got divorced. And 30 years later, I actually published that exact comic. I had it professionally colored, and I had it lettered because I had lettered it on back because it was 30 years ago.
Okay.
And I got to see the light of day, and that was fun too. And so, as it turned out, Sergeant Flag was extremely popular with the readers. I got a lot of positive feedback. And so I do an Agent Kirby comic, I do a Lynx comic, I do a Sergeant Flag comic, and then we do an anthology book. And the anthology book gets me all the short stories that I used to like when I was a reader. When I used to read Green Lantern was in the back, and then Firestorm was in the back. Green Arrow used to be in the back of Action, if you remember all that. Marvel used to do triple action. They used to split Iron Man and Captain America in one comic with their stories. And I thought that would be fun. And it allows me to explore some extra characters that don't see the light of day, and because we publish so many books. And then Jim does his books, and Eric does his comics as well. Gilbert is our art director now. He does his book, and so we all publish something that we really love. But it's a labor of love. I mean, when we finish the Kickstarter, all the money rolls into the next round. Someday we'll end the Kickstarter and we'll be done with this whole thing, and then there'll be money at the end. But at the moment, it's mostly just rolling.
Sure. So it sounds like you guys keep a very fast pace then.
We do. We're aiming for a Kickstarter every February and August. So August 1st, February 1st.
Okay.
And in between, we do production. And so I thought that we could actually produce comics faster than that, but I've concluded at 5 years that we cannot.
Well, still,
if they could draw those comics faster than that, they'd work marvelously.
Yeah. Let's say, still, for being independent, that is not bad at all.
We've published 52 comics now so far in 5 years. And we've got hopefully 6 comics coming in next round.
Okay. Nice. That is not bad. So we had kind of talked a little bit about that. The different creators, you mentioned the different creators of each of the characters in the G-Man universe. And so something that new creators may not necessarily think about is how to talk about the rights to the characters or the rights to their project when they're working in collaboration with others. Because that's definitely a learning skill.
Everyone does it differently.
Yeah.
And the way we like to do this is if it's in my book, I have the publishing rights to those characters. If my character in your book, you have the publishing rights to those characters. Because we wanted a shared universe. We wanted it to be like Marvel and DC. All the things that we had loved, basically with Bronze Age comics. Not that we're trying to do something retro, you know what I mean? But certainly that is the sweet spot for all of us is, those Bronze Age Marvel and DC comics.
Sure, yeah. And that's I'm also a sucker for shared universes. I love crossover events. I love tag teams.
Right.
For me, that was always like kind of the hype moment of like when I was a kid skateboarding by like school and sat by the 7-Eleven, and they had the cable that had Wolverine in it. That was always like a great moment for me. But I guess you mentioned that everyone does it differently, and that's very much true, especially in the independent scene. There's no Marvel and DC and all of them have their lawyers with their set contracts and how you discuss things, but in the independents, you kind of have to learn how to have these conversations with amongst yourselves in a way that is professional, respectful.
Well, Tyrannus just crossed over with Tyr in the last round we did.
Yeah.
And the idea was that while we published the comic, we both retained rights.
Yeah.
We both have a copy of it. He can print it for the rest of his life as many times as he wants and do whatever he wants with it. Yeah. It was the crossover. We crossed over last time with Tomorrow Girl. And so we ran our copy and then turned over all the files to Ben Dunn, and the other press will run their copy when they get around to the idea is that we want to support each other.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so the goal has been to support each other. It has been. Jim, Eric, and I supporting each other, but also we're trying to support our independent creators. In the Agent Kirby book, you can pledge to join the team. That is the first pledge that's set out. Mm-hmm. Your character appears in roughly 2 pages of the book, and the artist will draw those out without the characters in it. Before we'll be done when the Kickstarter starts. We don't want to start printing the comic when the Kickstarter starts. So everything's done except for those 2 pages. And then we do a handbook, like the Marvel handbook or DC's Who's Who. And so we put your character in the handbook so they can tell the full backstory. then you have the
That's
character appearing in action in a few of the pages, and so people can see your character in action. Buddy Chris, who was my favorite Archie, sponsored himself as one of the characters in one of the comics. And since then, I've used him like Agent Colton from the Shield, from Shield and Iron Man, where he basically goes around and deals with all the mess that superheroes create. When the heroes want to run away so that they don't have to deal with the police, he makes sure they get arrested. When there's property damage, he takes care of the property, which he does all the things that you have to do in real life to take care of these after the superheroes leave. And so that turned out to be fun. We had someone back, a character called Queen, and so we did a story with the girls, and we added her to the mix. I'm working on another story. We'll be out till next year with another better character that appeared in one of the prior issues, and he's going to we're going to go basically to where he is and cross over with his character. So we like to to be a part of the universe.
Definitely. I guess my question leading off all this then is, when you're having those discussions about how you want to approach the universe and have people interact, is there moments where you need to like set aside and like answer those questions of who gets what rights, or do you was that something you lead with when you're having a discussion?
Everyone works differently.
Yeah.
When Jim and Eric use my characters they'll usually show me the script and tell me, is this okay? Do you want to change anything before it ever gets to this point? And then I can make corrections.
Nice.
When I write their characters into my comic, I don't dialogue that portion. I said, I'd like you to dialogue those words so it sounds true to your character.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that they're having a huge role, but I still like it to be in their voice. And also, all the characters don't sound like me.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
When we did the crossover with Tomorrow Girl, I did give the script to Ben Dunn, and he said everything sounded, but he didn't want to co-dialogue. But everyone has their own opinion. I like to work it. But
that's a really cool way of collaborating. So then, have you taken that extent and have done a complete co-write a script with another writer, or have you only kind of had bits written by each other?
I'm not a big fan of co-writing. I've co-written a story. Actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. I co-wrote one story for G-Man Comics, and then I had a writing partner, and we did a comic for Evil Pie, which is the Evel Knievel themed restaurant in Las Vegas. And so Tim and I wrote together, but we had very specific marching orders from the owner. And so there was a lot of back and forth between Tim, and then there was also back and forth with the owner trying to get everything he wanted in it. And we also did one called Golden Tiki, which is for a tiki bar. And that one was a little more mature than the Evil Pie one, but still within what we would consider reasonable. And so that one also I did with Tim, and there was some back and forth with us, and back and forth with the owners and the managers, and then even some back and forth on the coloring. They all had a lot of opinions, and of course the Evel Knievel family. I don't know if they saw it or not. We turned it into the managers who ran the restaurant, but it's a Evel Knievel family, among others.
Yeah.
But I mean, in general, I like to sit down when I feel creative and write for as long as I feel creative.
Yeah.
And then put it aside. I mean, I'm only publishing twice a year. I'd have to run out a script in 30 days. So when I'm feeling creative, I usually write in lumps, where I'll have a really good action scene, and I want to write that, and then I'll have a good ending, and then I'll have a good. Then I start writing beginning where I want to introduce the character. Somebody doing it for the first time, they need some action to who the character is. I need to put the character through his paces so you get a good feel for that at the beginning. then what's left is filled in with talking and fighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how much there is of that is based on how many pages I got left. You need the talking pages to establish who your character is and get people to feel good about them and buy into who is and understand him. And then you're fighting just so it's fun and, there's more action. Of course, the big scene was always the action scene to begin with, but you've got, other,
I get that. I'm currently working on a couple mystery books, and moments where there's I have really good cinematic scenes in my mind, and I'll pump those out super quick, and then I get to the explanation or the problem solving, then I have to look back and wait, does this make any sense? And I get lost for a week just trying to pin together the board.
Yes. I'm definitely familiar. I don't write sequentially, as it looks right. But by the time I'm done, I feel like I did a job weaving it all back together. In our process, as soon as I'm done, pass it off to Chris, who is my proofreader. Archie is my proofreader here, and he reads it. And I used to use a gentleman, Lou Mugen, who worked on not Lightning, the Marvel one, the Inhumans.
Yeah,
and he was reading my scripts and giving me feedback. Lou is passed. And Chris has taken over that. And so he'll read through it and he'll give dialogue pointers and he'll tell me where he doesn't understand what's going on, which is very important. Because in my mind, I saw the whole thing, and then you have to break it down into little tiny squares. And sometimes what happens from one panel to another is real clear in your mind, but no one reading it understands what you were thinking. And so we try and make it whole. And then after it's learned, we have a team of anywhere from 4 to 7 proofreaders who will go through, proofread it, look for spelling errors, look for corrections. And at the same time, they may make some dialogue suggestions at the very end if they're minor. We're not going to rewrite the whole comic, but we might change a sentence.
Sure.
All right.
And of course, getting at our halfway mark here, so I want to hit something that I'm personally very curious about. You're doing this all at the same time as also being involved in, as you said before, comics news, running for
Yes.
news. What does the day-to-day for that look like?
For the comic news site, for doing okay. So for the comic news site, news comes all day long. I mean, they just barrage of emails from the publishers, and some sites rewrite those, and some sites run them as is. And we tend to write them as is because they hire someone professional, and I used to be that person to write these things, the ideas that publisher wants to get out to the public. And I feel like we're doing a disservice if we rewrite them.
Sure.
So if they send me an email that's complete and ready to go, that just gets posted immediately. In between, anything that looks mildly interesting to me that I want to know more about, I'll interview the creator. Or if I see an interesting Kickstarter, I'll interview the creators.
Yeah.
And usually I do that by email, because that frees up both our time and I don't have to transcribe it afterwards. So, so someone will get it, maybe 5 questions minimum, 30 questions maximum. I don't like to do more than 20 questions in general. I did 30 questions for 30 years for Rob Haynes. But, in general, I want to keep it to a point where people are comfortable reading it and not having commit too much time to it that they wouldn't, that I lose them. And like that, I got 36 contributors. So while I'm doing this, other people are posting things. They're posting their reviews. They're posting their columns. They're posting their podcasts. This podcast is syndicated on our website. So, we syndicate a few of them, and people come to us and say, we'd like it if you syndicate it, and we just embed the feed so that whoever we're syndicating, they actually get all the hits. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to the reader, but if you run a podcast and you're looking at your numbers, it's important that anyone who views it on our site, you get those numbers. They're added to total.
Absolutely. And kind of talking about all of this, that there's a lot of things going with that, and kind of like at the base of it all, is a digital news site hosted on a website. And you had mentioned that at the start of your career, you had gone from using clip services to moving over and not knowing how to manage your own servers and stuff like that. So I imagine your entire career has been a lot of learning new skills and figuring out how best to deploy them.
Well, that's how life is.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to school till you're done with school, and when you graduate, all the things that you learn to do are self-taught for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you never invest a great deal of time into learning anything. You might take a weekend course or a seminar. Some people go back to school for a whole career. Sure. But in general, you learn the stuff as you go or as you need to. And I had started on the internet very early, so there weren't a lot of places to go. It was pre-YouTube.
Yeah,
it's which is the great how-to.
Yeah,
Google. We were on the Yahoo list server, and it was great that Yahoo had taken over from Lycos and Alta Vista and AOL.
Yeah.
YouTube is basically the digital Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yes. Well, actually, the truth, when we started, it was actually, I think, eList server.
Yeah.
And eList server was bought by Yahoo, which ended up in Yahoo. and the first website I did, the first web I did, was on GeoCities, and so all over your older list will remember GeoCities, and
I remember GeoCities.
And it was a big deal for me to go from GeoCities to going to full code. And so that was an interesting shift. Well,
here, more notes. I'm very much like an internet head person. Like the free beer movement and all that. Like that's like stuff I've been ingrained to. So, like going back and like talking about Alta Vista and like old protocols is like it's a weird nostalgia trip for me, but I love it. So we kind of talked a lot about all that, and you'd mentioned that you might only spend a couple days on a weekend learning a new skill, or just kind of grabbing things as fast as you can to get them out there, so make sure that you're have the skills you need to do what you're doing.
Hold on. Oh, sorry. The dog.
You're right.
Drop the dog.
We're good. What was probably one of your, I guess, favorite new skills to pick up as part of your professional career, or what was one of your favorite learning exercises that you did while you're picking up something new as part of your professional career?
I always like something new. I like to learn new things. I like to see how things work. I like to see how things break down. And so all these things I can't do initially.
Yeah.
Never a point where I know how to do this. I say I can't do this, and then eventually I figure out how.
Yeah.
And and it's trial and error, and it's making mistakes. But fortunately, I've been an early adopter in a few things. So as I'm making the mistakes, no one's watching. Almost no one's watching.
Yeah.
And then time goes when I'm skilled by the time anyone's looking, or at least mildly old enough to.
Right. That's my childhood, Tim.
Yeah.
All the bad things I did in my childhood. We didn't have selfies.
I was a big fan of FemForce. The Prime Bill Black's Fun Comics #4 first came out. I found that in my comic store. The clerk there pointed it out to me. It had a really cool Broderick cover. And so I've been reading ever since. One of the internet had done is connected Bill Black. And I read his website. And, we met, but we've talked a few times. And when Force 200 came out, he drew me into the comic.
Nice.
I'm one of the background characters, and I think that's really
All right on.
So, and one of the comics we produced, one of the alternate covers, was a homage to that Bill Black Fun Comics #4. So I asked Bill, can I draw you into my comic? And he said, sure. And so with each Oro Sergeant flag, Bill Black will be in the comic as a movie director. And it's going to be Bill Black and Mark Holmes. And they're not doing Fun Force. He's making movies.
Nice.
For Night Vale Media, his own company. And so I thought, well, if superheroes exist in the real world, there'd be a show like Cops with superheroes. And so we call that Capes. And Bill and Mark appear in the comic trying to film him doing his daily activities as a superhero. But he's not the most PG character we have.
Sure.
And so there's some issues with what goes on and all that. And it's just interview is done in one. So you see them trying to capture what the superheroes do on a daily basis, just like when they rode along with the cops and you saw all these people in wife beater shirts that used to be called cops. Before cops came on and saw them beat their wives while wearing one. It's so we have fun with it. We have fun with what he can say and what he can't say, how he says the things he can't say. We have fun with what happens during Ride Along, and it's just a one issue deal.
Sure.
The recurring characters. But I thought that it was really cool to let it, have them appear in the comic.
Definitely.
And I mean, these things mean a lot to me. A lot of the little things we do.
Right.
One of the covers we got are people that I've interviewed over the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I knew these people and I said, would you do a cover for me? And that's been the nicest part, is the people who are willing to do something to, part of the journey here.
Yeah.
Steve Lytell, I used to have a close relationship with, and I always thought someday I'll do a cover with him. And then during the pandemic, he died of COVID, which is what really made me think I should talk to some people before I don't have that opportunity. And, as it turned out, Richard Gross did a cover for it, and he also passed. And so, I'm really happy that he did that for us.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I every time I talk to some sort of creative, like in any type of field, they always mention like the references to real life people they know and something in their work. And I feel like in comics, you get that double because the writer will put in someone, and then the artist will also put in someone. And hopefully it's always a good cameo. You get like the person the person you like working with ends up going back as a side character, like thinking about his name or whatever. But I'm not gonna lie, I have also had a few people that had not the best relationship with be victims of the big bad. In a few issues.
Getting out your aggressions.
I had an artist say, I need a reference for such character. I asked one of the people I work with, I said, would you mind being a reference? He said, sure. Shot a picture, they were in the comic. Then I had someone come up to me and said, no, I really want to be in the comic. And so we drew him in too, in a different comic. I have not drawn myself in the comic or written myself in the comic. Mm-hmm. But I've appeared on a few of the covers.
Yeah.
One of the covers is me being held up by the characters on their shoulder, like the Archie cover, where the Shield and Hangman are carrying Archie on his shoulder. So that was fun. And we did another one where it was me, Jim, Eric, all on the cover, and Gilbert and his whole family. And we're all in the audience watching, a fight.
Nice. That's awesome.
But in general, I'm not there looking to put myself in the book. I could do that every page and every issue. I could be the star of the book if I wanted to. That's not really what I want to do.
No.
But I'm happy to have some of the plainclothes people be the people that I know.
Yeah.
And include them. I did do a story with my son and his wife.
Nice.
I had wanted to do a Hawk and Dove style story. If you remember Hawk and Dove, the Ditto one. So I was going to have a conservative character and a liberal character called out to where there was a riot. And one would be protecting the property and one would be protecting the people. And they both, based on their political views, see the other one is not supporting them. And so I thought this would be fun. And I did this with co-writers because I wanted a liberal co-writer. I wanted to write down the middle, and I wanted a liberal co-writer and a conservative co-writer to write with me so that I could get these viewpoints across properly.
Yeah.
And so we had some fun with that. And so that the liberal character was a version of Black Terror. We ended up calling him Noir, and he was a black man. And so we had some fun with that. And then Josh, who draws in the most cartoony style of all of our people, intentionally so, we do a strip with Kid Terror. We had him murder Terror Noir. And so the person who drew the most cartoony one got all the violence.
Nice.
But the characters evolve, and we have some fun with them. We had sometimes it's just a joke that you get. Things seems really funny, and the idea of putting Kid Terror in a car with Agent Squires, who's not a superhero. Just the whole scene of them in the car was what wrote the whole story, and then I put the story around it. But just as they're on a stakeout, and one is a young kid who really wants to be a superhero, and the other guy is an older agent who knows you just sit outside and watch and wait.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be, fun.
Definitely. All right. Well, I feel like as we continue moving on along the different facets of your career here, I feel like I also got to mention your work in the awards portion of the comics industry. You've been on the nominating committee for the Inco Awards since 2012, so over a decade there.
Yeah, I think I only missed 1 year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I wasn't there. I think I just didn't get a full set of nominees in time. But Bob Almond is a contributor to the website, and we've been since the website started. He was from almost day one. He had a column Inkblots.
Yeah.
And so as he's done this, we've supported him the coverage of the Inkwell Awards, and and so I've been on his nominating committee as part of this almost all except for 1 year.
Yeah.
I do a panel in San Diego and at WonderCon, how to get news coverage.
Yeah.
And when I was in San Diego with my son and I was working for Archie, my son found a comic called Anne Frankenstein, where Anne Frank was turned into a Frankenstein monster and the Nazis. And this was fun. It was a fun idea. He had no way to sell it to anyone who wasn't standing directly in front of him. He had no website. He had no way to order it. He was not doing mail orders. And so it made me realize that there were a whole group of people in there in the independent press section who had no idea how to get press coverage at all. They didn't know what to do, what to put together, how to set up a marketing campaign where someone would pay attention. So I set up the panel and I invited all the people who I'm sending press releases to for Archie. Or at least the people who would come. And the panel's different every year, but it's always different journalists. And then I had Holly Golightly, who also worked at Archie, and does Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose, with her husband Jim Ballant, if you're familiar. Mm-hmm. She was in the panel, and she could talk about what she did for marketing. They're selling one title. It's bi-monthly, and it's been going on for 15, 16 years, something like that. And so I thought she'd have valuable insights to people how he markets that. And so For a while, I had someone from the Channel 4 News in San Diego who was on the panel.
Nice.
Jeff Vaughn from Diamond from Gemstone Publishing is on the panel every year. In fact, after we did the first panel, he turned to me and said, "We should do this every year," and we have.
Awesome.
So while I was doing one of those panels, Bat and Lash also worked for Archie, if you're familiar with Bat and Lash. And his wife, Jackie Estrada, is the one who does the Eisner Awards. And Jackie was at one of my panels. And afterwards, she asked me if I wanted to be an Eisner judge.
Nice.
And so it's a one-time deal. You go one year and you're a judge. And so I went down to San Diego and we did the judging for a few days. Then we did the presentation. And before we get to the judging, you have to read everything submitted.
Yes.
Which is a lot. I thought I liked to read a lot of comics. I had no idea. I read some things that were really, really fun that I would never have read before.
Yep.
Some of them wouldn't have appealed to me on a general basis, and some of them I just wouldn't have ever covered.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a lot of fun. And then we all get together and we argue over which ones we like best, why, and what we think, and then we eventually vote. We're all electioneering for our choice in each of the categories.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess also we should mention that last year you yourself were awarded an Equal Award for your.
That's not correct.
No.
I was an award nominee at one point, but I did not win an award.
Okay. Yes. We'll have to adjust your notes here. We'll have to adjust your Wikipedia because it says you won one in 2023 for your 10 years on the committee.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. That's the folly with Wikipedia.
Yeah.
You just haven't gotten a letter yet. That's all.
It's in the mail.
The bulk of my Wikipedia entry wasn't part of it, was done by Michael Netzer, who you might remember from the 70s and Miss Mystic and then Neil Adams Studio. I had interviewed him a few times, and he did a cover for me as well, and he wrote the bulk of that.
Interesting. Okay.
Now everyone in the world edits it and adds to it, but
right, of course. Yeah. See there. Okay, I see. Yeah, there's just a there's a conflation there. The Above and Beyond Award.
Oh, okay. That yes. That from the Inkwell. Yes.
Yes.
That I got.
Yes. For your time on the
tireless years of service in the Inkwell Awards, and inking is. There are a lot of artists who ink their own stuff. A lot of people digital ink now. A lot, there's some places where they go straight from pencils to colors. It's harder to be an inker than it used to be. And I got to tell you, that's what kind of making comics less fun now.
Sure.
To a large extent, people take the rough drawings that were the sketches, and then they draw an outline around them, like a coloring book. And then the colorist comes and adds a lot of detail to it. But you're missing a lot of the hatching. You're missing a lot of the fine lines. You're missing a lot of the detail. Everything that made, Neil Adams popular, everything that made John Byrne and George Perez popular, everything that made the Image popular, all that's kind of washed away as the coloring has become oversaturated and uses to make the lines that are missing. But that's become your mileage may vary.
Sure. David Rios, of course, our resident colorist, and Jose Fuentes, our resident inker. So you guys, the natural feud has been set between you two.
I totally agree with you.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the inkers add a lot to the weight of the line, to give motion, to give detail, to give shadow. And certainly you can add color to that, and it looks beautiful. And I'm not saying the coloring isn't beautiful. The coloring is absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. But it does give sameness to every piece of art you see if it's all done by coloring and you don't see the stylistic intent of the artist.
Absolutely.
I mean, Jack Kirby didn't draw at all like like anyone else, and it was square and blockier, but he had a lot of energy, and he had a lot of detail. And if you ever see any of the stuff that Marvel puts out, they've had it recolored with a modern colorist, and they do that 3D type coloring. You lose a lot of the charm.
Yeah.
And so, and maybe it's because I saw it before and, it doesn't look the same, and that's what bothers me. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Yeah. So we are coming up for our last 30 minutes here. So I'll open up to our co-hosts, Jose and David. Did you have any questions yourselves for Rick before we move into some of our more rapid fire sections?
So you had mentioned that you have a slew of people. I don't remember the number you used, but a slew of people working on the website, working on the First Comic News. Is there, and the answer is probably obvious, I just don't know. But is there like one person they all? Because you said they were writing columns, they were writing different stuff, like writing the news and everything and bringing it in. Is there a hub they go to so no one overlaps?
None whatsoever.
Or are they assigned stuff?
None whatsoever. When I worked for Newsarama, I had an interview that I was really excited about that I had done with Roger Stern. And someone else at Newsarama had also done an interview with Roger Stern, and they told me I didn't publish it. So it was published by Comic Book Resources, which is how I ended up working Comic Book Resources at the same time I was working for Newsarama. And so I would give, I'd then vary who I gave what to. And sometimes they didn't want the stuff, and other times they'd give me amendments. But a lot of times I hunted down my own stuff. And so that's basically what I do here. No one has a deadline on any of this stuff. If I'm doing an interview, I try and make it topical. I try and make sure, they've got a comic coming out, they got a Kickstarter launching, they got something going on. I try and tie it in there. Not to do a historic piece where you're going to get a million questions and we're just going to go from, how they started to what they did last. I did an interview with Neil Adams that ran 27 pages. Wow. And we covered and he talked for more than 2.5 hours. And it just covered everything from beginning to end, But general, and I did that with a few people. But in general, you've got this Kickstarter coming out with your new characters. Look kind of cool to me. And so I wanted to talk about it so someone actually knows you're doing this. Barry Gregory each week picks out something from the Planet catalog, and we spotlight that as the indie spotlight of the week. Nice. And so, and it's not 52 weeks a year, but it's pretty close. But I mean, if he's doing something that week, we just don't do it. It's not everything's done as people feel like it. This is going to be fun to do. And so, I think that people are more inspired if they're doing something. And so if it takes someone a month to do an interview, because I've got one guy who goes back and forth with the creator forever, filling down all the minutia of everything that was interesting to him. And I got other people who are fast and looser with the stuff. And you know what I mean? And it's all, but I figured as the site goes on, different writers will attract different readers. And so if you're a fan of what Tim Chismar does and the way he presents it, you'll just look at Tim's stuff. And if you like the way I do an interview, you won't look at my stuff. And in between, there's news that drives people there on a daily basis. The news is just basically the loss leader for any of these news sites, and ours included. People go because they want to know what's going on. And then when they go to see what's going on, they see something and they say, oh, that's really cool. Or I want to know more about that. Or they did, but they see something and they'll take a look. And so, it's columns, it's the interviews. Those are the fun things. And I don't really want to tell someone, well, you're in the middle of this, but wrap it up right now. We're done.
Right.
And that's why I've kept so many people there for so long, is that they don't do anything they don't want to do, and they don't do it, they don't want to do it. And they don't have to worry when they don't have time. Because there's always, if you're doing a review or if you're doing an interview, there's always time. I've got one guy who's real top with the reviews. He does a short review of every Wednesday's books on Thursday. But in general, the reviews are a little staggered afterwards, and people are just reviewing the things they liked. And if you find a reviewer and you like what he's recommended before, probably like other things he recommends, because you probably have the same taste. And sometimes we run 3 reviews of the same comic at different times. And they give them different grades because they're different readers who had different viewpoints. You know, and if one of them resonates, you follow him. Because for every comic that ever comes out, there's someone who absolutely loves it and was the best they've ever read, and someone absolutely hates it and it's the worst piece of trash they've ever seen.
Yep.
Very true. Very true.
Well, I will have to say that, out of this interview, the one thing that I got, most predominant thing I got, was that, you seem to be having fun. You're just rolling with having fun with it, learning new things and just rolling. You're not, you're not going and letting it wear you down. It's, looking at opportunities and, and what you can do to make it fun, even though that, it may not be the most, as we all know, comics aren't, the typical way to go and make your billions.
No, that's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm convinced of that.
So you have to flip it around and say, well, if I'm not going to get rich on this, at least I can have fun doing it. And it seems like that's something that you really embrace. So that's awesome to me.
Well, this is it. I've enjoyed comics since I was 7, and I still enjoy them. And everyone working with me on any of the projects anyway, whether they're working on First Comics News or they're working on G-Man Comics or anything else they're doing, be fun. And if you're not having fun, why are you doing this?
Exactly.
I mean, pitch and make a lot of money. You want to have fun. But if you're doing something that's supposed to be fun, you might as well be having fun.
Yeah.
Nothing is worse than trying something that's supposed to be fun and having a bad time doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also have to say, what an awesome puppy that you had there.
Oh, well, thank you.
We are a very
I am required to mention that it is my wife's dog. I gave it to her as a birthday present. I was convinced I didn't like Chihuahuas. Little did I know the Chihuahua would love me.
Awesome.
The day we brought her home, she was 8 weeks old, and we're in the car, and she crawled up onto my wife's shoulder in the car and went to sleep under her hair.
Nice.
And we never told her, don't jump on us, don't climb on us, or anything like that. So to this day, she'll just jump up in there, and I'm supposed to catch her wherever she is. And she'll climb up on my shoulder and just hang out. If you see my profile picture on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you get, there's the dog on my shoulder.
Nice.
Yeah. My cat used to do that before he got super fat. He used to sit on my shoulder like a parrot.
Yeah, exactly. Nick's taller than everyone else in the room.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, or are we going to move into our lightning round here at the end?
Oh, lightning round. Intriguing.
This is kind of more getting to know more Rick, the person behind comics, as well as knowing what influences you. As we have said before, all creation is some form of pastiche from our influences, so we want to get to know what makes your brain tick. So, Rick, this last week or month, we'll go over our list here. What have you been reading? What have you been watching? And if you play any sort of games, tabletop, video, otherwise, what have you been playing?
I wish I played more games. There was a point in the past where I was less busy and not publishing comics, where I played a whole lot more games, both video games, tabletop games, and all of that. Yeah. Right now, my wife and I are watching Fubar on Netflix, which is on Schwarzenegger and his daughter, and it's funny. And so we just started that this week. But other than that, we like the challenge a lot. And we're watching that currently too. Nice. And we like Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
That we do the cooking or have any aspiration to do the cooking. Somehow watching them yell at those people is somehow entertaining to us.
Yes. Definitely. Have you been reading anything recently?
I'm really excited about the new direction with X-Men. I'm reading X-Men forever, and I'm really looking forward to a fresh reboot there. But I'm still reading X-Men.
Yeah.
And I've been reading Flash consistently since I was 7 every single month. I'm really happy with Captain Marvel. They're doing a Shazam book and that. And Knowing has been outstanding, far better than Batman. But I use a comic store. I read a lot of comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Then what if there was one piece of media that you think is underrated, or perhaps just maybe not as looked upon? Do you think that every creative needs to watch, read, play, ingest some sort of media, or multiple pieces of media? What do you think is your recommendation for that?
My recommendation is to read. And it doesn't matter what you read. If you can read on the internet, you can read novels, you can read even biographies, you can read even manuals, how to do different things and learn things. But I think that reading things gives you more richness. So when you're telling your own stories, it gives you something to lean into. But also it makes your mind work. And when you read, you paint those pictures in your head, as opposed to mindlessly watching them go by. And there's definitely something more mindless watching them go by. It's been a long day. It's hard. You finish dinner. Sometimes you just want to veg out and watch TV, and a very passive act. And readings is not passive. But I think that as much time as you devote to actually reading something, and it doesn't matter what you read, just read something.
Absolutely.
And I think there's less and less of that going on every day.
Yeah, definitely. There's the stats to back that. What is your favorite hidden gem book then? What is something that you've held on to as being your favorite book that maybe not many people have known?
Well, Femfoil probably has a very small readership, and I've been reading this since 1980 something. Whenever Bill's Black Fun Comic number 4 came out, and he's been doing this since 1969, and they were all mail order, and by the internet, it was very, very difficult for me to get all those back issues. So that's just really impressive to me as well as fun. But The Pitiful Human Lizard, if you can get your hands on that influenced the way I wrote. It changed the way I tell stories. Nice. Because his character is literally pitiful.
Yeah.
And why I don't write a pitiful character is those real human interactions he had with his mother, with his coworkers, with him trying to, it was not really about him fighting crime. It was really about him being average Joe trying to fight crime.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you have seen it. It was a very small print run that he self-published initially, and then it came in through Chapter House, which is now House.
What was it called again?
The Pitiful Human Lizard.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's not expensive. You can probably find it somewhere on eBay or on one of the stores. And they're fun stories, but it's a lot. So when I started writing, I decided that there should be scenes with them going to get coffee, scenes with them just driving in the car together, scenes with one guy picking the other guy up for work to go with his superheroes. Just little things that happen in everyone's everyday life. Because when I read it, I thought this is really a different take on this. And with the way we've set up our universe, everyone's an FBI agent. Everyone's registered with the government and the FBI. They're deputized vigilantes. And so for some of them, it is a job. You got to clock in. You got to get paid. You got to, you're out there trying to save the world, but it's really, and so we get them complaining about their boss. We get them having coffee together. We get them going out for beer. We get, you know what I mean? I try and put in their personal life be more like everyone else's personal life, as opposed to, you know, what you see with Kent when he's not Superman.
Okay. And I guess lastly here, as we get to looking to wrap up, is there any other points of advice or recommendations you'd give to new creators looking to start making their first comic this year?
If you're looking to make your comic this year, the trick is to actually deliver. And so don't do anything till you're done. Don't look to market the book when you have the first 3 pages. Don't look to, you know, because you'll get the press, and if you can, and then they're going to want to cover you when the book's actually coming out because they already covered it. Don't plan your Kickstarter when you have 3 pages done and think, oh, I'll get all the money and we'll finish it up once we have the money, because that day never comes, or it comes too late. If you pledge Kickstarter and the book comes in 2 months and you were told it was coming in 2 months, they're happy. But if it comes a year later and it finally arrives, you say, well, at least they gave it to me. They didn't run off with my money. But you're not real eager to pledge again.
Yeah.
And the people who are pledging don't really understand the lifespan of comics after you're done. Our comics are done before the Kickstarter launches, or they finish up while we're doing the Kickstarter, because we got the 2 pages on one book, you know. And so the Kickstarter is over, but we don't have your money, because it takes 2 weeks before they give you, they fund you. Right. And once we get the funds, then we turn the order into Kablam to print it.
Yep.
And it takes a day or 2 for them to calculate it out, sometimes a week, because they have to calculate all the shipping on all the different places you're sending it to. Once it was even 2 weeks, you know, I had a lot of international orders. And so then it's going to take them some time to print it. And in addition to print it, they have to do the onesie that I'm not doing. So everyone gets one of these, one of those, and one of these, and they get this cover. And that's a long process. And so it's 2 months from the time we're finished with our comic till it's actually at the reader's home. And if you're starting this and you think that you're going to start doing the art as soon as your Kickstarter is over, you're probably looking at 90 days to finish the art. You don't have to do a day. And then you're probably looking at 2 months after that with the printing and the logistics. Even if you do your own logistics, even if you Comic Wellspring and they ship all to you, and you put them all in little boxes, it's still going to take you a whole lot of time to put one in each box and put a label on it and get to the office and all that. It becomes your life. And so, you know, you just have to don't overpromise and don't prepare.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, just stick to it. Mm-hmm. You know, it took a year for us to complete the first comic. You know, don't stop. Just keep working on it. Just keep you know, putting it together. Eventually, you'll have it done. And when you have it done, that's when you try and market it, and you try and you listen to what people tell you. If they read it and they don't like something, don't stick to it and say, "Well, no, that's the way I want it." They just don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, pivot. Listen to your audience. They're the ones paying for this.
Yeah.
You know, for all of us, this is just something fun to do. But for the customer, they're going to come back and buy it if they like it, and if they don't like it, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so you got to please them. You don't want to give them everything they want, because then it's boring.
Yeah.
But you want to get, you know, because there have to be twists and turns they don't expect. They have to be hoping for something with the next issue that they didn't. You know, there are ways you have to get people to want to come back, but at the same time, you've got to deliver a product that's pleasing.
Absolutely. And that is actually one of the benefits I found with the independent production cycle, is because it does take so long for us to put out a book compared to a big publishers. We can make pivots if we need to between issues. We're not
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And not only that, you get to tell your own story, and people undervalue that.
Yeah.
But I mean, Chris Claremont quit the X-Men because he didn't want to go in the same direction the editor wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that was the best-selling comic. You know what I mean? If you're doing the one-man show, or you know, you get a one-team show, you're still telling the story you want to tell, and you're telling it the way you want to tell it, and it's got all the beats that you want it, and there's a value to that.
Yeah.
And you can feel really good about that in a way you might not feel good if they hired you to write Spider-Man, but they told you everything that you had to include, you didn't want to include it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you didn't get a choice. That was the editor's your marching orders. If you don't want to write that story, they'll find the person who does want to write that story, and there are a lot of people who do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And we're coming up on our time here, so I'll open up the floor. Rick, what do you have to promote? Where do you want people to go to follow you? What should people look from you next? Whatever you wish to promote or push at this moment.
Well, at the moment, First Comics News is the comic news site. You could go there every day and find out what's going on in the world of comics. G-Man Comics is our comic publishing. It's G-Man-Comics. We wanted a hyphen between the G and the man, and then it didn't make much sense if the man ran into the comics. So we have the two hyphens there. I also bought the forwarder where all the letters smushed together. That you can go there and you can see what we're doing. There's always an ad for the next Kickstarter. And so, you know, we got a piece of promotional art there and a link to the Kickstarter, and you can sign up if you want to be notified when we go live in August. But that's basically it. I don't have anything coming out right now. Right now, we're busily sharing the art back and forth across Facebook. You know, my artists are all over the world. I've got people in the Philippines. I got people in Brazil. I've got people in Mexico. We've got people in the United States. And we're just sharing the art back and forth and, you know, looking at, I got people in Canada too. You know, just looking at the art, seeing what we like, getting it colored, getting it all ready. Everything is somewhere in mid-production, except we do have one book that is completed, but everything else is in mid-production. And everyone works at a different speed, so they're all at different stages of production at different times.
Sure.
As long as we all reach the finish line by first, we're good.
Yeah, that's a goal. Yeah, what is I'm sure you can't give us too many details, but is there anything that you're really excited about with this upcoming Kickstarter that you want to point to, or anything that you can tease or allude to?
Well, I mean, we're on a swim special, like Marvel Illustrated. And so we're doing Endless Summer, and that turned out to be a lot of fun. Eric said, why don't we do something like that? And thought it was a lot of fun, and the artists were all excited too. And so, you know, we've got the teen characters in little puff arms in the pool. We've got, you know, we've got both the men and the women in the pool and on the water, and it's just a different way to present our characters. And everyone was excited to take part in doing something different, and so that was fun. I'm really excited about the Sergeant Flag story that comes out with Bill Bacon. I call him Will White, you know. But you know, happy about that. I've got another character, Lynx, that I was talking about earlier, and so at one point, making fun of him for not having a Lynx mobile and not being like a real superhero. So we've got a short story where he actually gets a Lynx mobile.
Nice.
And then we have to deal with the story that he can't afford a Lynx mobile. Because it's one thing to get a fine Italian sports given to you. It's another thing to pay for the headlight, to pay for the insurance, to pay for the, you know. My father saw a Rolls Royce for sale, and he thought he was going to buy it, and the guy told him, you can't afford the Rolls Royce. And he says, I'm sure I can afford that price. He says, no, you don't understand. You can't afford the headlight. You can't afford the oil change. You can't afford.
So did you end up?
When you buy used, at the time it was $20,000. But you know, you just can't afford the whole lifestyle that goes with it. And he finds out that you know, with what he makes and the lifestyle he leads, he can't afford billion toys.
So does he end up in like a gremlin or something like that?
Well, we started off him. He was taking a character. We have a character called Murder Hornet, and when the big Murder Hornet scare was on, I decided I should have a character called Murder Hornet, and he has a body double, sort of like Iron Man, where Tony Stark was Iron Man, but he pretended it was his bodyguard. Our Murder Hornet's a white supremacist. And anytime he has to deal with the police or gets in trouble for beating up minorities or things like that, he has a stand-in. and the stand-in with it, and the stand-in does what he did, so the stand-in can't incriminate himself. And so with the story where his stand-in was killed and he had a new stand-in in training, and he's in this little tiny Volkswagen with the two of the heroes in the front, and he makes fun of him for not having a Lynx-mobile. And so naturally that's what we give him, and we give him a fine Italian sports car that he can't possibly ever deal with. And so he gets his dreams, and I'm doing that one as a parallel story where I've got this story going on both sides, like Indecent Proposal. One character says no, and he says yes, when they're both given an opportunity to have their dreams come true for a price. And then he finds out, as we continue with the story, because he said yes, he finds out that he can't live with this.
Okay.
So I think that, those are the type of stories that kind of interest me. And I think there's an element of real life to this, because you're not a superhero, but everyone wishes they had the Batmobile. I don't care who you are. Right. You go to a comic convention, you see the Batmobile on display, you wish that was your car.
Yeah.
And so we go through that kind of wish fulfillment and what that would really mean. I don't know if any of you know Jerry Lawler is the wrestler.
Yes.
But he bought a Batmobile at a comic convention, and the Batmobile was his daily driver for a long time.
Yeah.
Nice. Rick, I apologize. I have to go.
Oh no! I'll talk forever.
I appreciate you. But I gotta go. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. It's all right. Well, Jose is jumping up, but we are at that time, so we will look at wrapping up here. Unless we have any final thoughts, Rick, David, anything you guys want to say before we?
I just wanted to see. I'm assuming, based off your past, that you will be at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yes, I will.
Do you do other, many other conventions, or you just stick to San Diego?
Typically, every year you do WonderCon and San Diego Comic-Con, which are by the same people. We went to Comic-Con this year. I've done the Long Beach Comic-Con, and then when I was a retailer, I did all the conventions. But I used to not be able to be as free with my Saturdays as I am currently. So now that makes a world of other opportunities. But in general, I won't normally fly to a convention. You know what I mean? It has to be within driving range. I went to the New York Comic Con once, but Archie paid for me to fly there and paid for my room. So that was all,
That was nice.
A good deal. We were nominated for the Hero Awards, Heroic Awards, and they presented at C2E2. And if I knew I had won, I didn't win. If I had known I had won, I would have flown out for that. But I wasn't going to fly out to see if I won.
It's just if you had anything coming up for, if any of the viewers wanted to come out and meet you and pick up some books and sign stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we'll be in San Diego this July. Okay. And so and I'll be on a variety of channels, at least 2.
Okay. And I will be there as well.
Yeah, we're not. Oh, you'll be there?
Yeah, I'm Southern California myself, so.
Very good.
But yeah, I will try to stop by and see you.
Oh, sounds good. That would be great.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, it is that time, so we will end our show here for tonight. Thank you everyone for coming live. If you are listening to us after the fact on any podcast service around the world, make sure to head on over to Silverline Comics YouTube or Twitch, where you can give us a follow and be notified when we go live and join in the chat like others have today. Next week, we'll be talking about the history of romance comics, their how they helped bolster the comics industry, their slow death and current renaissance. And make sure to check out Wednesday Wham. It's over Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those respective days. However, before we go, I don't know if you are. I feel like knowing Roland, you have been forced to say this several times in your life. But Rick, can you give us a Make Mine Silverline before we end the show?
Make Mine Silverline.
Thank you.
Yes, I've been there you go. I've been a strong supporter of Silverline and Roland since Malibu. I love the Protectors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you want to chat with David and I for a little bit in our cool down, we'll be kicked to a green room after this. But thank you everyone for watching live and watching after the fact, and we'll see you all next week.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline. You heard me.